So Donald Trump made it back to El Paso this week, but what hasn't made it to El Paso is the money that he owes them for the police protection that he's received earlier this year. This has been a big issue and a big sum of money. And so we're joined once again by Dave Leventhal, the Center for Public Integrity, to break down this particular issue for Trump. Dave, welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you.
Good to have you here. So we've talked about this earlier this year, that he owed quite a bit of money, or his campaign at least owed quite a bit of money, and it hadn't been paid. Can you bring people up to speed on that?
So Donald Trump owes the city of El Paso, at least as far as the city of El Paso is concerned, $569,000 stemming from a Make America Great Again rally that Donald Trump had conducted back in February. It was about $470,000 worth of initial police and public safety related bills. And then they tacked on a late fee when Donald Trump's campaign didn't pay it. The bottom line is that Donald Trump's campaign doesn't pay any of the many bills that municipalities across the country sometimes send him for police and public safety related costs. We've reached out to the Trump campaign on numerous occasions. They refuse to explain themselves, haven't returned any of our messages in regards to that. And it's kind of an issue where some presidential candidates do pay these sort of bills. Other candidates don't pay these sort of bills. And there's no federal law that actually mandates that they do unless there's some sort of a contract signed ahead of time. And those really only happen and come to pass when rallies such as this, campaign rallies, are being conducted on city property, which in the case of Donald Trump's El Paso rally, it was not.
I don't understand how there could be no legal ramification. Like, if I owed the police $50, I'm sure that would become an issue in my life. He owes $500,000. So look, you mentioned there that this is not just an issue specifically to El Paso. We're gonna return to El Paso, but do we have any kind of idea of the total sum of money that he or his campaign owe across the country?
And we totaled it up back in June, and at that point, it was almost $850,000 across 10 different municipalities, ranging from Lebanon, Ohio, to Erie, Pennsylvania, to Mesa, Arizona, and of course, El Paso, which makes us back in the news by virtue of Donald Trump going there just yesterday to meet with folks who have been, of course, affected by the very tragic shooting that happened on Saturday in El Paso. So Donald Trump did not address this. We spoke to El Paso officials yesterday. The campaign, Donald Trump's campaign, didn't pay this outstanding bill when Donald Trump came to El Paso yesterday. And as of today, it remains to be unpaid alongside with all the other bills that Donald Trump owes, according to the cities that say that he owes those bills.
In advance of him arriving in El Paso, did anyone in the government raise this as an issue? Was anyone pushing for him to not be invited back as long as he was owing? I mean, not just the government, not just randomly, but specifically the police, the people who protect him in case there's violence at his rally, in case there's a shooting or something like that. These are people who are willing to lay down their lives to protect Donald Trump. He's stiffing them. Did anyone raise that as a concern?
There's a whole host of folks who have raised this as concern. Margo, the mayor of El Paso, when I spoke to him earlier this year, he said this is an issue of personal credibility and that Donald Trump should absolutely pay this bill. We don't know at this point because there were some private interludes of whether any El Paso officials specifically pushed this point when Donald Trump was in El Paso yesterday, but officials there have made it very clear all along that they want Donald Trump to pay this bill. And they want him to pay this bill not just because they think that he should, but because it has an effect on the city services that they provide. That would pay more than a couple of salaries for El Paso police officials for a full year. Donald Trump oftentimes talks very lovingly about law enforcement officials and police officials. He met with some yesterday. He was very supportive in his words there. Basically, their argument is that even though Donald Trump may, by law, not be required, mandated to pay these bills, that he should, out of a moral obligation to the police officials in El Paso and across the country, and that he should do so because there's no reason for him not to. His campaign has a heck of a lot of money on hand. The El Paso bill represents about 1% of what the Trump campaign has cash on hand in its account as of the end of last month, or the end of June, I should say. And that's the argument that El Paso officials are making, and that's what we're hearing from them.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned that he met with the police representatives. So you mentioned that the government officials there have brought this up. Has there been any concern raised by actual members of the police force, their leadership, or anything like that, either in El Paso or around the country?
For El Paso, that's unclear. I haven't spoken to police officials there. I have spoken to police officials in other jurisdictions where Donald Trump has received bills stemming from his rallies, and they've made the case too that it's a matter of public safety. If the police department or sheriff's department is out there protecting Donald Trump because the Secret Service has asked for that type of protection, that they feel like they should be remunerated. They feel that they should get money to offset the oftentimes very significant expenses that are incurred when a presidential political rally comes to town. Now, political officials will make the argument that, hey, we welcome the president, we welcome any political candidate who wants to come to our city or our town. But if it's going to be something that, for example, is a rally that attracts 15 or 20,000 people, and we basically have to send our entire police force out to protect the president, and we don't have much of a choice in the matter, then that's something that we would hope that his campaign would cover, since this is a political rally in nature. The one alternative is that they say, hey, Mr. President, you're not welcome here, but no city is willing to, at least at this point, go that far and basically uninvite the president to their city.
Yeah. Well, look, it's either going to take that sort of pressure, or there's going to have to be popular pressure put onto the campaign. Whether Trump or any other candidate who's not paying these bills, there has to be some sort of consequences. And Donald Trump, he doesn't like paying any bill. He's not going to pay $500,000 unless there's a big national conversation around it. Dave Leventhal, thank you.
Congress could address this.
What's that?
Congress could address this. They just haven't passed a law to address this, I should note.
Well, hopefully they'll pick that back up. And as always, thank you both on this issue and everything else you join us for. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, John.
Here on the Damage Report, we talk a lot about the big banks and their ways of getting rich off the poor. They saturate the market, but there are other options. And I've got info on a socially and environmentally responsible financial institution that has no ATM fees, gives you cash back on every purchase. They even commit 10% of their earnings to charity. It's called Aspiration, and if you go to aspiration.com/TYT to sign up, you'll get these perks, and that's more money to spend or to save or to spend. Just treat yourself.